All right, hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about Trans-Saharan trade. And in the whole purpose of this lesson is to figure out how trade is impacting the development of Africa. So we need to start with what is development looking like in Africa. So the earliest societies in West Africa are going to be extended family. So these are going to be about groups of 15 to 20 people, and they would all be things that people they would be related to. So cousins, uncles, aunts, grandparents, and then that immediate family, so parents and children. And each of those people are going to be able to produce most of the things that they would need in their area. And if they couldn't produce what they would need, then they would trade for additional resources. And then the leaders of these communities would be the elders of the family. So that could be the grandparents or maybe the great uncles or great aunts. Whoever is the oldest would be in charge. Then we kind of transition, so instead of just trading all the time with each other, they're going to join together to form villages, which would have 100 to 200 people. And then in those communities, extended families would work together to meet all of the community's needs, like controlling flooding or mining for iron and gold. This is where we're going to see more specialization of labor, so people having more of a job than just survival. And then leaders are going to be chosen more for their wisdom than just their age. There's one particular family group that went village to village that becomes very important in the history of Africa, and that's the Bantu. So the Bantu people were farmers, nomadic herders, iron workers, and really they just had any job available. And they kind of started in this location right here, the little red dot, and moved in West Africa and moved southward around 3000 BCE. So we went way back in time. And their migration, which means a permanent move from one region to another, is going to go gradually from village to village. And this is important because it's going to lead to the spread of the Bantu and Bantu-related languages, the spread of the ability to ironwork and also melt it down, but also make it into things. The spread of certain pottery techniques, the spread of agricultural tools and techniques, and the spread of certain foods into new areas like plantain, bananas, and yams. All of these things are happening because they're traveling and taking them with them, which means that there's some cultural basis that's going to be shared in these areas, and that's why it matters so much. So then we go from these family-based communities to the villages, and now we're going to form cities. And mostly they're forming because of ironworking, which is going to lead to more efficient farming and more specialization of labor, which again means that people have specific jobs. They're not all working on surviving. And then trade is going to be part of that specialization, and so because the farming is getting better, because the new tools with ironworking, then we are going to have a surplus of food, which allows people to trade away what they don't need, and also they have handmade goods now because people are able to do more than just survive, so they're actually able to trade those as well. Then we're going to get kingdoms forming, which is going to group in multiple cities. So there are 3 famous West African kingdoms, and those are Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. And we're going to spend the next lesson looking at them more in depth, but for today we're going to give an overview. And all 3 of these kingdoms are developing because as they rule cities, they're going to take over other locations, and they're also going to start taxing goods that are being bought and sold within their areas or within their reign. Rule? Whatever. You get it. Where they're controlling, they're taxing. And so with this, they're going to become very wealthy. So just a couple quick reminders. West Africa, when I'm talking about West Africa, I'm talking about this area in the lime green. And then when I'm talking about North Africa, I'm talking about the area in the hot pink. Now, remember, the Sahara Desert is all through here. Okay, so that'll matter. Just keep that in mind as we move forward in this lesson. So, when we talk about Trans-Saharan trade, we are talking again about this region, West and North Africa. And you can see some of those major trade routes here as well. And so, when we're talking about Trans-Saharan trade, we mean they're going across the desert in order to make those trades, which, as you can imagine, is very difficult. One, the Sahara Desert is the world's largest desert at 3 million square miles long, which is huge. To put that into context, that is bigger than all of the contiguous United States, and it would take a merchant about 40 days to cross that desert. So here is a size comparison where you can see the U.S. on top of where the Sahara Desert would be, and that is to scale. So just keep that in your brain when we talk about these trades and how that's happening. Okay, so the earliest known trades between the North and West Africa are happening around 400 to 500 BCE. And during this time, two things are going to happen to kind of expand those trades. So between 400 and 500 BCE and the earliest trade routes, they're going to be kind of few and far between, with more trade happening later because of the camel introduction in 300 CE, which is going to allow some caravan routes to be established. So when we have camels, people are actually able to cross the desert because they can maintain water. So camels can drink up to 25 gallons of water at a time, which means they don't need to drink very frequently. And they're able to travel continuously for several days without stopping. And their fur is going to protect them because they have long eyelashes that keep the sand out of their eyes, some fur tufts out of their ears, which keeps the sand out of their ears, and generally their skin is protected by the fur. And then also, there's going to be a spread of Islam, which is going to bring in more merchants into West Africa. And we'll learn later about how there was an attempt by the Arab people to take over Ghana, but Ghana is going to defeat them, but it's going to leave the people behind, which also leaves the tradition of trading behind. So, I want you to think for a second. We're going to play a little Dora the Explorer action. What would you rather choose, salt or gold, and why? So no matter what you just picked, it doesn't matter because both at the time were perfect for trade, and they were considered equally as valuable and important. So let's talk about salt first. So salt is origins is in North Africa, and you can see here where that is. And they are going to mine salt by pouring water into holes into the ground and then letting it sit in the sun and evaporate. And as the water was evaporating, it drew the salt up to the surface, which allowed them to kind of cut away blocks of salt from the top, which you can see down here on the left. With those blocks, they were able to do a couple of things, and it kept its value because it's an important part of people's diets and animals' diets. When you live in a desert, I'm sure you will sweat a lot, right? And Africa's climate is quite warm. And in order to stay healthy, when you sweat, you have salt coming out of your skin, and then you need to replenish that. That's part of why sports drinks have electrolytes, and which is basically just salt, in order to keep you hydrated. And if you don't have enough salt, you don't stay hydrated enough. It's also just yummy. Like, food without salt is pretty bland, but especially during this time, the meat is not as well preserved. We don't have refrigerators. There's not a lot of spices going around. And if there are spices, they are very expensive. Well, salt is very expensive as well. But it enhances the flavor of spices as well. And it also preserves food because, again, we don't have refrigeration. So you're going to salt your meats in order to keep them around. Make them into like almost jerky. And all of that is going to lead to the value of salt, which is very helpful for them. On the other hand, in West Africa, they're going to have gold, which can be retrieved by panning or by mining in an area called Wangara, which is south of Ghana in basically the rainforest. Okay, so the Wangarans are going to keep the location of their gold mines secret, and no one exactly knows where these gold mines are even today. And they know that it's a valuable trade item, but you can't do much with gold besides make pretty things. And that's about it. So how did this exchange between gold and salt happen? Now, I should mention here that there are other trade goods being exchanged, but for right now, we're going to focus mostly on the gold and salt. And when we do our simulation, you'll see some other things that are being exchanged as well. So one way that they're going to exchange is through silent barter. So this is going to be a little different than what you've normally seen with trade, because the two parties exchanging goods are never going to meet face to face. So it starts with the traders from the north leaving salt at an agreed upon spot, probably by a river or a stream or something like that. Then they're going to bang a drum and leave a couple of miles away and wait there. And then traders from Wangara are going to come and leave bags of gold dust next to the salt. And if the northern traders are cool with the amount of gold that they left, they'll just take the gold and leave. But if they're not good with it, they're going to leave, bang the drum again, and go, so that until they are satisfied with the amount of gold that is left. And that is one way they exchange. Now, there are regular trades happening in other places, but the silent barter is going to be helpful for the Wangarans and the Northerners, because they're going to be able to exchange goods without ever speaking. So it's a completely silent exchange. So people who never spoke the same languages are totally able to exchange goods. And it's going to help the Wangarans protect their location, the secret location of their gold. So with that being said, this is the end of the video. So you're going to follow the link here to a Google form reflection. When you're done with that Google form reflection, you can read, write, or draw. But for now, please remember not to come back to this video, but please go ahead and use your notes, and I hope that you have learned a thing or two. And if you need any help or have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Bye!